Coping with language deprivation. I'm Jenny Nyholm, the Mental Health Outreach Coordinator for Tri-County GLAD. As a child, have you been exposed to usable language, such as sign language, or experienced a disruption in thinking or mood behavior? This question may vary from a deaf person to a deaf person and is associated with language deprivation. Neil Glickman, PhD, from the University of Massachusetts Medical School, wrote in his blog post, Language Deprivation and Deaf Mental Health, that there is a unquestionably disabling condition to which deaf people are vulnerable to language deprivation. He also points out that deaf people are the only people in the world who, with normal intellectual potential, may grow up without a native language skill. Language deprivation is well known in the deaf community, especially when it comes to the attention of the mental health provider. Patricia Elizabeth Spencer and Mark Marshak, 2010, brought up the reality of language deprivation issues, which are due in part to the vast majority of deaf children who lack the opportunities of previous generations. To learn natural sign language. In his presentation at the ADARA, the American Deafness and Rehabilitation Association, pre-conference, April 18, 2018, Neil Glickman, PhD, lists the mental health issues which may be impacted by language deprivation. Bizarre contact, delusion, impoverished language, confused, disorganized thinking, coping, problem solving, and aggression. The lack of deaf professionals and community may also be a part of the language deprivation. Being left out of the dinner table with the hearing family members who do not use sign language in a natural mode may be another issue. I interviewed deaf and hard of hearing community members who share their views on language deprivation. Hello, my name is Joel. I experienced language deprivation, which happened at school. I remember students in my elementary class who were deaf, Chicano in the barrio, who used gestural signs with their families, and in school, the class teacher banned my language, my sign language, and she got mad at me and gave me a punishment if she saw any one of us using such signs and put our names on the board. And that was our culture. It was rejected. And we followed C sign signing text English and spoken English, and I was forced and suffered. Plus, she forced us to wear hearing aids that were considered a punishment. And that was my experience in high school. I remember taking speech And I did not like it. I was not happy because it was too long and cumbersome. And it was the same thing over and over. My jaws were sore. And what was it for? Speech. It was not my favorite thing. I prefer to use sign language. I am fine with that. They called me a low level and not smart, and they said that I was disrespectful towards speech. Plus, in the IEP meeting, they told me that my mother, that her son's speech was not good and awful, and he would not be successful in education and school and thrive. And they said no, and it broke her heart dramatically. When I was a young child, I was raised as a hard of hearing. My entire family used speech. When it came to eating at the dinner table, they tended to communicate by speaking, and that was when I experienced language deprivation. Hello, hello. Yes, I experienced language deprivation. I grew up in Mexico. And for 2 years until I moved to America, I grew up visually seeing my family, and it was an oral school. I saw things until I was 8 years old. I started when I learned to learn C sign at the school. I learned a lot from now on. Hello, I'm Ron, and I grew up in an oral school. There was no sign language. The school was strict, and you could not speak with your hands. Even gestural signs such as eating or box, our hands were down. We were to speak continually all the time. If we used our hands, we were punished frequently. And pointing was used, we got punished. If eating was used, we got punished. Speaking was ongoing. For an example, the class I was in a half circle, in front was the teacher who gave a lecture in speech. And I raised my hand to answer the question, and the teacher looked at me, and then I responded. And then she would come up to me and took my hand to her face and practice the speech until it was perfect spoken words. I was impressed. The oral school focused on speaking perfectly, listening, and education. Until I was 13 years old, I transferred to a school for the deaf, and I was first exposed to American Sign Language, ASL. I was overwhelmed, bullied, but I was still stubborn and learned to sign through my eyes, and I communicated and interacted. It helped improve with my writing and reading, and I was like, whoa, amazing. I look back at the oral school with the punishments with the signing, and I punished back by throwing away the hearing aids and did not use speech and turned my voice off, and I signed and signed. And of course, my parents were disappointed but understood my need to sign, and I got along and interacted. I enjoyed it, and my parents saved the letters I sent to me about vacations, Boy Scouts, and camping. And I often sent them letters about how I was doing at camp. And eventually my parents passed away. I cleaned their house out, and I found the box full of letters that they saved during my growing up years. And I found the letters which I had wrote horribly in the oral school. I read them all. And in the school for the deaf, where I transferred to, it was a big difference comparing the letters. Yes, the oral school was no good. Nothing against the oral school, but I was against oralism and the method for deaf in general. It's sign. Can language deprivation be prevented? Yes, language deprivation among deaf children and adults is a preventable issue in the community. There are solutions for preventing language deprivation. From Glickman's presentation at the ADARA, teach American Sign Language to the families. Communication assessments. Teach language communication developments with language deprived persons. Deaf communication specialists and certified deaf interpreters. Pre-therapy and therapy considerations. The community members who participated in the interviews. Thank you for giving your time to share your views on language deprivation.